I'm joined now by somebody who is no stranger to Doctor Who, having worked alongside two doctors on, I believe, 10 episodes. So I'd like to introduce supporting artist Clem. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for inviting me, Alex. I'm really pleased to be here.
Oh, well, of course, I had to ask you, Clem. You've done so much on the show. But I was wondering if I could perhaps start by asking, how did you start off as a supporting artist? Where did it come from?
Well, my brother was a background artist many years ago, and then he ended up having a featured role in Casino Royale, which was Daniel Craig's first James Bond film. And he played a character called Mr. Fakutu, who was one of the poker players. And it was quite an involved scene in it. It lasted about 20 minutes, I think, of the movie. And yeah, he had some really great things, and he did modeling as well, a couple of commercials, and yeah, he just really encouraged me to give it a try. I have a very similar look. We both got the long hair and stuff, and in fact, we both featured in Being Human, an episode where we opened season 4 as two vampires, and that was really cool for me to have to actually work with him on screen as well.
Across anything, not just Doctor Who, but you always seem to have a knack of finding the camera. You know, you get a lot of screen time. That must be very satisfying when you watch the finished thing back, because it's not just a case of, oh, you know, you're in the back of shot. You're always very visible.
Yes, I think it's even though a lot of the roles I do are supporting artist roles, I'm often seen as a character face, and there's quite a few of us who are supporting artists, and often it's the same similar sort of setup of people groups set up for a scene. So there are some that will always get featured more than others, because when they're looking for something with character, you know, it could be like a Bond den or something, villain den or something, you know, that kind of thing is just perfect. So, you know, kind of my features or my face, if you like, and or Star Wars or something where they have somebody that they want with an interesting face. So that's kind of why I think I get featured a lot. Also, you know, the more experience you gain, the more able you are to perform in front of camera, and that's quite important too. You have to be relaxed and I know and have a sense of where the direction is, of, you know, wherever the scene they're filming, just have a sense of its movement and just kind of naturally play with that without, you know, being obvious. You know, I mean, probably some people who, you know, glare at the cameras, but, you know, yeah, I think some of us have done it so long that we're kind of, you know, we're seasoned pros at doing it.
So something like Doctor Who, is that quite a welcoming production to come into? You know, is it easy to step onto?
Um, Doctor Who, as you, one of the first one episodes I worked on was Angels Take Manhattan. And it was just kind of like, it wasn't really a thing that they just said, yeah, it's Doctor Who. And it was like, I didn't kind of register. And I have been, you know, I loved Doctor Who as a child. So it was just kind of like, yeah, all right, okay, well, it's a job, something to do. And I went down to the Doctor Who studios, and we did this scene where I'm the pottery painter, and there's a story is somebody, you know, Matt Smith wants the foreman to ask the pottery painter to paint Yowza on the pot to warn somebody River Song in the future. It's so convoluted, it's like ridiculous. And but yeah, that was my first kind of like it only sunk in laughter. And I had no idea that he was starting the camera on my face. So it was kind of weird when I watched the episode. Oh my God, he's really picked me out. And so I was really quite surprised at that. And I'm obviously pleased. And yeah, and I hadn't watched the if you like, the new Who. So when I started working on that and other episodes, I started to, you know, watch, you know, season 9, 10, 11, you know, well, actually earlier than that, the David Tennant's and the Chris Eccleston episodes as well. So I, you know, I did a bit of research into kind of what the feel of the show was.
And something where you're sort of quite heavily featured, you know, like the painting of the vase. Are you given much background as to what the scene is, or is it literally on the day we want this, this, and this?
for that scene, really, honestly, it was just like the director said to me, you wouldn't happen to be able to paint or anything? And then I said, well, I'm a trained artist, so yeah, actually I am. And he said, that's perfect. And he just sat me in a chair in front of the vase and said, that's that, that you do this. So it's not like we had any kind of a look at the script and beforehand. I mean, that's more to do with when I did the Clockwork Droid and the Space Corps. Those ones you did need to have the what they call sides for the day. For that scene, what's been shot, and all the dialogue and everything, so that we know exactly what's going on, but also the timing of our movements. And a lot of the movements, sometimes because if your vision's partial, you might be partially sighted because like in the Space Corps, we started off with our eyes closed. That was what they initially wanted. And so to be walking around with your eyes closed, it's not, and then get from A to B and be timed so that, say, Bill says a certain bit of dialogue. It's like, oh my God, I got to do this, like literally want me to do this like in the first take or something. So yeah, there was a lot of, you do need the sides that, so it's really important so that we can time our walks or whatever.
And something like the corpse, or I suppose the droid in Deep Breath, they have a very particular movement. So you brought in beforehand to sort of workshop that with the other people playing those parts as well?
Yeah, we did a workshop for each one with Elsa Box, who's a Doctor Who choreographer, and she does all the monster walks, and we just go through the character and what's the movements, or like the Clockwork Droid is a robot. So it's got a skeletal structure. It can't breathe. You can't blink. Lots of kind of little things that to help the character be more believable. And thing with the Space Corps is like we're all we're supposed to be a dead person in a spacesuit. So all the kind of weight of the movement is in the legs, in the weight of the boots, which aren't, I mean, they look heavy, but they're actually quite light. But so we have to make them look like they're heavy. So just little things like that. And we weren't supposed to look, but then I think one of the cast members in one of the scenes was seen as a corpse with her eyes open. So they changed it halfway through from eyes closed to open eyes. So you probably noticed that now that I'm telling you, be like looking at it and go, oh yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
And I suppose part of the joy of Doctor Who is that you're not always playing humans. It's sort of weird and wonderful characters or costumes. Is that quite nice to do a job like that in comparison to something like Broadchurch or something?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like you have a blank canvas. If you're like a Doctor Who creature, obviously you have to take instruction from Elsa and the director, but you have a blank canvas in terms of who you are and what you are, and what I suppose part of the relationship of the scene and the environment. I mean, even in Broadchurch, if you're whatever character, you might be somebody in a bar, or you might have to go through a process of what your relationship is. Because we're human beings, so we have to make it believable, as natural as possible. You might say, whatever you're seeing, you kind of think about what you're playing. And I think that's, I think that all makes it all, the cumulative effect is it makes it more convincing as a scene.
And there was one particular sequence in Time Heist that I was delighted to see you doing, where they sort of explain the workings of the bank. Was something like that quite a couple of days worth of work, or was it just we talking an afternoon or something?
That was literally an afternoon. I didn't even know what we were going in for. Practically, I think it was one of the last shots of the day. We kind of waited in the green room most of the day, and it was I think we maybe took 3 takes of that. It was very quick, and Peter Capaldi was waiting outside. He maybe had just done his scene. So he just came and he recognised me from Deep Breath, of course. So a lot of the scenes, he got, he's very familiar with my face because I'd done quite a few of the episodes. So it was nice to see him. He said hello and stuff. And yeah, we just went straight into that scene. No real explanation what it was or anything. You know, when you watch it back, you go, oh yeah, I see how that fits in. Yeah.
So is it often that you're perhaps only in for, an afternoon or a day, or does it depend on the part and the job?
Yeah. TV, it's normally a lot quicker because basically the budget isn't there, so they may have like one or two takes and then want to move on because time's money. A lot of them takes, if you like, are spent with the main cast, and the dialogue is probably the most important thing. So obviously, things like background work is the expendable side of things. In big blockbuster movies, it's a little bit different. They've got a lot more money, so they can afford to keep running until this director's happy with what they've got. And in some cases, if they're not, they might reshoot the whole thing, which happened on Star Wars on Solo. They drafted in another director to reshoot all the scenes, most of them.
And you do a lot of work recognisably as yourself. Is prosthetics work something you're keen to explore a little bit more?
You know what? I used to think so, but I'm not sure. Some of those, kind of like a lot of my friends play Cybermen, and you've obviously mentioned them, that you've interviewed some of them, and now when they talk about that, I just go, you know what? I'm not really sure I want to do that. Maybe Dalek. I mean, I fancy the Dalek. That sounds pretty cool. Got a bit of space in there at least, but I mean, those Cyberman suits, I don't think there's much. Sounds quite claustrophobic. It's the same with the Stormtrooper. I don't think I'd want to do the Stormtrooper. I mean, they literally screw you into the suit. So if you want to go to the loo, you're in real trouble.
And you've appeared in a lot of sort of science fiction and fantasy films and series. Is that a genre that you particularly enjoy yourself?
As a fan, I love science fiction films and fantasy films. I'm a big superhero fan as well. So I love all that pop culture. So yeah, it's very pleasing and satisfying for me to be in science fiction films. And as I said earlier, I think when you're playing something in a science fiction or fantasy storyline, it is a little bit more freedom in how you express yourself. And it can be unreal when, if you're in a scene from Star Wars or something and there's like life-size X-Wings like whizzing past you and stuff, it can be a bit bizarre, and, little droids whizzing past you. You do kind of have to pinch yourself and you think, well, crikey, this is like, I can't believe I'm actually doing this, And it's the same with Doctor Who. I mean, I think with the Space Corps in particular, it was like to be chasing the Doctor around was just in that some of those scenes on a space station. It just seemed unreal, really.
And as you said, you'd worked a lot with Peter Capaldi, particularly on his first story. How was he to work with? Is it quite nice that every time you're back, he also talks to you and remembers you?
Yeah, no, he on the first episode I worked with him, it was he's got a great sense of humour. He's very warm and friendly. I think he's just a perfect professional, and he's really, he's really engaging, and sometimes you see him and he's like he goes and sits with himself to learn his lines, and that's like really not a time to bother him. But he makes the effort whenever he has a spare minute. He does make that effort to chat to people, and he did. He has. He spoke to me on Thin Ice and Extremis. He called me the chameleon because he'd seen me on so many of the episodes, so he thought that was quite funny. Yeah, it's lovely to work with him.
Is it unusual to have quite a sort of regular association with a particular show? Doctor Who, you returned in a number of parts, and a similar thing with Star Wars, or is it a case of what comes along and what they think you're right for?
I think it's just what you write for. I don't think it's really. I mean, I think if you're some of the creature performers in both Star Wars and Doctor Who, you know, if their face is completely covered and they don't recognize them, so obviously they can use them over and over again. And, you know, they're very experienced at what they do. And there is a lot of skill involved in what they do. So I think a lot of those guys get called back for those kind of shows and similar, you know, similar things in other movies. Obviously, if they see your face, I think they have to think about that. I think certainly, I think I was fortunate in those Peter Capaldi episodes, and you know, I don't, yeah, I don't think it's like always a common thing. I think they have to think about it, especially in movies, maybe more so. If you're definitely featured, then that's, you know, they'll probably think about that, whether to put you in again.
And what perhaps has been your most sort of fun or interesting film or series that you've worked on?
Um, because I'm a Marvel fan, I do love Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange was and it wasn't. That wasn't. I mean, I trained for initially for another scene, which I couldn't make. But that particular scene actually was only shot in a day, which was the Hong Kong Sanctum scene. But just being in that movie, and you know, there is a, you know, there is some satisfaction if you know, you see yourself in a movie, and you know, it feels, you know, it validates the work. I mean, obviously, there's things I've done where you're not seen, and you might have worked weeks on it, but so it is satisfying. But I mean, particularly the Marvel movie, I love Marvel comics. That's a big deal for me. So yeah, always satisfied to work on a Marvel project. But also Doctor Who. I loved doing the creatures. I mean, the creatures, the Clockwork Droid and the Space Corps. You know, those are, you know, definitely my favourite things of the Doctor Who jobs. You know, because they are more, they're more involved in the narrative.
And do you think understanding the source material or the heritage of these programs helps you when you're actually on set and in character?
No, I don't know. No, I don't think so. No, I don't think it does. But yeah, no, I just think you just do what you have to do, and just, you know, hope it's a good job. You're doing a job. You know, often when I'm at a convention, you know, I say to the, you know, they have families. Sometimes a lot of families come and see me with their children, and they've maybe watched an episode where I was a Clockwork Droid or a space zombie, and then I say, well, did I scare you? You know, because if I didn't scare you, I didn't do my job. You know? So, you know, most of them say, yeah, I was like that. I was really frightened. So, oh, good. You know, that's great. I did my job.
And when you're doing events, is there one particular part or production that people mention more than others?
No, I think I've done a lot of conventions around the UK and some abroad, and I mean, the common denominator, there's like 4 franchises that kind of dominate, and then there are others. There's like, you've got your Star Wars fan base, huge. Doctor Who fan base, huge. Harry Potter fan base, huge. And a growing fan base for Marvel Studios as well. And then you have other things, you know, you get anime characters and lots of kind of different science fiction shows, you know, Game of Thrones and stuff. But those particular ones are the one, you know, that I get approached for. Sometimes James Bond as well, because I've worked on 2 James Bond films.
And something like a Bond film, obviously it's a different set of principles. You know, it's more character-led, it's stunts, whereas, you know, Doctor Who, Star Wars is prosthetics and aliens. How different are they to work on?
Depending on the scene, really. I mean, I worked. Oh, I shouldn't really say, should I? I worked on No Time to Die, and we did a great scene that involved some stunts, which was really cool. I can't say many more than that, but so yeah, it's possible. There's a lot more kind of action involved. Yeah, it just depends on the scene. It could apply to anything.
And as you mentioned earlier, you're an artist as well. So how does that fit into all this? Where did that come from?
Well, it's originally what I studied. I studied in graphic design, illustration, and then fine art. So it's been something I've trained for. So I've kind of fallen into this, but I do see that there are kind of I think there's advantages to. I can use that creative process when I perform on camera. I'm more. My observation of things, maybe. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of the creative process I can use when performing. That's what I'd say.
And for anybody that perhaps wants to get into being a supporting artist, is there any sort of key characteristics or advice that you'd give them?
Just be yourself. Maybe think about who you are, what kind of things you imagine you could be in, because certain people have certain looks. And, when you submit to your photograph to a supporting artist agency, your look will define the kind of things that are put forward to you or you'll put forward to as a production. So, I don't know. I'm Chinese. I have this long hair. I'm guessing they thought, I can't put this guy here, so he would be great in science fiction. it's that's kind of how it's landed for me. It could have gone the other way. It could be. There's a lot of my friends do like a lot of period work and stuff, and so that might be their thing, or they might be, play lots of office joes, doctors or lawyers, or policemen. Mickey Lewis, he plays a lot of policemen. You might have heard that. It just depends. Your face and your hairstyle and everything, and your whole demeanor can just determine what kind of things you end up in. And more often than not, whenever I get offered any kind of film or something, it's got some fantasy edge to it, or something not normal. So I guess that's where I fit in casting.
Well, I think on that note, and of a very wide and varied career, I'd just like to say thank you very much for your time, Clem.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. And hello to all the Doctor Who fans around the world that are watching.
Well, thank you for joining us, Clem.
Thank you. Cheers.